Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'm David Bowditch, the Assistant Director in charge of the Los Angeles Field Office of the FBI. I'd like to very quickly introduce Chief Berguan from San Bernardino San Bernardino City, and Sheriff John McMahon from the Sheriff's Department in San Bernardino, as well as Assistant Special Agent in charge John D'Angelo from the ATF. So today we're going to go through a number of things, and we're going to answer some of your questions. We're going to open it up for a few questions. But first off, I want to talk about the work that JTTF has done, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and then our local, state, and federal partners throughout the weekend. This has not been a restful weekend for any of us, nor should it be. Our job is to continue the investigation at breakneck speed as long as we need to do that, and we will do exactly that. I want to correct something because it continues to come up. There was a search warrant that was executed at the Center Street address in Redlands this past weekend. In that search warrant, I want to make it clear because we're actually getting a lot of calls about misbehavior. The reality is when the FBI or any other law enforcement organization executes a search warrant, we obtain legal process that is signed by a federal or a state judge. We then make entry into those premises, and we will take the items that can be seized under the scope of that warrant. That is exactly what was done that day. When we leave the residence, we will either hand the keys to the owners, we will secure the residence if it was breached, as was exactly what the case in this incident. We secured it with screws and wood and left the premises. Once the FBI and our local partners left those premises, anything that occurred as far as forced entry or if anyone who was allowed into that residence has absolutely nothing to do with us, whether they were allowed in by the residents or by the landlord. So I want to make that clear. That's an important thing for the public to maintain confidence in your law enforcement professionals. Secondly, I want to clarify, we briefed you a couple days ago about the pipe bomb components that were taken and some of the pipes and some of the components of pipe bombs that were removed from the house on Center Street. If you recall, we gave you a number of 12. I don't want to get too technical because I'm not an expert on bombs. However, we do have experts that did that search. They did some removal of all those devices from that house. And ultimately, it appears there are 19 pipes in that house that we have removed. Some were in a bag. We're not going to unpack them one by one, and they had to remove all these components and these devices and take them out to a range, and then they began to safely extract them from the bag and safely pull them apart and count all the components, photograph all the components, and ultimately submit them into our evidence. So the number has changed from 12 to 19. Now that is not 19 pipe bombs, let me be clear. That is 19 pipes that could be turned into pipe bombs if all the components are there and present for them to actually be construed that way. Next, I want to talk about the radicalization issue. Many of you had questions about did the female radicalize the male in this case. The answer is we still do not know, but I will say this. As the investigation has progressed, we have learned and believe that both subjects were radicalized and have been for quite some time. Now, how did that happen? The question we're trying to get at is how did that happen and by whom and where did that happen? And I will tell you right now, we don't know those answers at this point. Next thing I want to, along those lines, is foreign contacts. We are working with our foreign counterparts to determine as much as we can. It's like any other investigation, but this one is incredibly large. We are attempting to expand that investigation out and build a picture of each person, the timeline, and ultimately the crimes that they committed. That takes time. We are in day 5, and I want everyone to recognize that. But we're working with our foreign counterparts. We're also working with the FBI's legal attaché offices, which are all over the world, and they are assisting in those efforts with our foreign counterparts. The next thing I want to mention, it's come up already. Yes, we do have evidence that both of these subjects did some participated in target practice in some ranges within the metro area or within the Los Angeles area. That target practice in one occasion was done within days of this event. The scope of this investigation I want to discuss very quickly. This investigation is massive in scale. Everyone knows that. We have conducted between, I would say, well over 400 interviews by now of people around this city. And I know some of them have called you and said they've been investigated, or interviewed rather. That's fine. That's what we do, and we'll continue to do as many interviews as necessary for this. Finally, there's been some questions about the total station, the recreation of the crime scene. What we are essentially doing is applying survey technology to the crime scene. And when I'm talking about the crime scene, I'm talking about the initial crime scene at the IRC, where all the victims were. I'm not talking about the officer-involved shooting. Yes, we are still holding that location because we are continuing to be extremely methodical, and we have actually brought in a reconstruction team to apply those tools, those survey tools, to ultimately paint that picture of how everything transpired that day. We have collected over 320 pieces of evidence in this investigation so far, and we have transported a number of those pieces of evidence to Washington, D.C., primarily to our FBI laboratory, to our bomb lab back there, the Terrorist Explosive Device Analytical Center. The last thing I want to talk to you about very quickly before I open it up for questions, and then I'm going to introduce some of my counterparts up here to address you as well. We have found evidence of planning, participation, financing. What I will tell you we have found evidence of pre-planning. Let me correct that. What I want to say is, I want to make sure the public rest assures, again, we are an apolitical organization and we will get to the bottom of this. And we want to find out everyone who participated in the pre-planning, if there was anyone else. We don't know everything yet. We want to find out everyone who profited from it, finance it. And I'm not saying there is anything like that, but we will leave no stone unturned, just like I've said in the past. The last thing is we have to remember this is a human interest, this is a human tragedy. This is truly a tragedy what occurred. We have brought out Office of Victims Assistance personnel from Washington, and this is what they do. They're very familiar with this. We are going to, at some point, hopefully this week, meet with the family members of the victims, both the decedent's victims and the injured victims. And that is a crucial part for us to allow them to ask questions and so that we can address them face to face and talk to them about our full commitment. If they don't want to meet with us, that's their choice, and we understand. If they do want to meet, we're there for them. Very, very important. So I'm going to take a few questions, not as many as I did the other day, but I will take a few. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any sense at this point who was in control during the attack? Did Touchbeam really fire the first shot?
We do not have any sense who was in control, and I will tell you, I want to be crystal clear here. We do not see any evidence so far of an Oconus plot, outside the continental U.S. plot. We may find it someday, we may not, we don't know. But right now, we are looking at these two individuals and we're beginning to focus to build it out from there.
And are you done questioning the grandmother at this point?
I'm not sure if we're done questioning her yet. Yes, ma'am. I've heard those same reports. I'm aware of them, and we are continuing to work, as I said earlier, with our overseas partners and our legal attaché offices to determine that answer.
Obama said that there was no evidence.
Pardon me? I'm not going to get into that at this point. Yes, sir. I'm unaware of this. What I can tell you is we did not have an open investigation into Mr. Farouk at the time of this incident.
Yes, thank you. Last night, President Barack Obama said that there was no evidence that they were part of a broader conspiracy here at home. Given all the evidence that you are gathering and finding, isn't the president incorrect?
No, I wouldn't say he's incorrect. We're still in the investigative phase. We're in day 5. Remember? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that they've been radicalized for some time. Do you have any? You mentioned that they've been radicalized for some time, both of them. Do you have any indication how we're talking years, months?
No, we don't know that. We don't know that. We have some indications of timeline, but we don't have enough for me to speak on it at this point. We believe they both were. That's the question for us, is how and by whom and where were they radicalized. Maybe there's not a by whom. Remember, oftentimes it's on the internet. We just don't know. I don't want to speculate. Yes, sir. I'm going to allow ask the ATF to address that question. All things guns. Hold your questions for ATF agent in just a minute. Yes, ma'am.
There have been reports that you may have had interaction or communication on social media with a man from Minneapolis who involved in tracking out those firearms.
I've heard those reports. I'm not going to confirm that at this point. I'm not aware of the facts of that yet.
Dave,
Yes, sir.
what's the status of Enrique Marquez? What was his role, and where is he right now? Has he been arrested? Has he been charged?
I'm not prepared to discuss Mr. Marquez at this point. I'm not going to discuss it. Yes, sir.
Is he being questioned?
I don't know the answer to that. We have not found any evidence of suicide vest yet. Yes, ma'am. We don't know. We're still building it out. I'm going to take one more question.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Video was there in the IRC, and does the video show any of the shooters clearly identified?
We're still going through what type of video is available. Back to the data exploitation, you bring me to that. There is continued data exploitation that is going on as we speak, and that will continue for some time. That is a painstaking process. That, as I've said in the past, we hope to get towards their intent with some of the data exploitation of the digital media. From now, at this point, I'm going to introduce ATF's Assistant Special Agent in Charge, John D'Angelo. John?
I'm going to talk briefly about the guns. It's been widely reported in the media that there were 5 guns involved in this investigation, recovered throughout this investigation. And what we have traced those guns, and what the trace results reveal is that all these firearms were originally purchased from FFLs in California from a time period between 2007 and 2012. FFL is a term that we shorten abbreviation for Federal Firearms Licensee, commonly a retailer who sells firearms. Farouk himself purchased the Llama and Springfield Armory 9mm pistols that were recovered at the scene, as well as the Savage 22 caliber rifle that was recovered during the search warrant. We have both the federal documentation and the California documentation to establish that he actually purchased the firearm. His name and identifying information appears on all that paperwork. Enrique Marquez purchased the 2 assault rifles that you've seen shown on the media, the DPMS and Smith & Wesson 5.56 rifles. We have the paperwork documenting those purchases as well. Right now, our major concern, the FBI, ATF, and the JTTF, is determining how those firearms, the rifles in particular, got from Marquez to Farouk and Malik. The firearms at present are at the FBI laboratory, where the FBI is performing forensic examination on them. After that forensic examination is done, we'll do a complete and thorough examination and determination of just exactly what these firearms are. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Bergwan, who will address some other issues pending in the matter.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about local response and what's going on in the city of San Bernardino as well as the region. Everybody saw what happened in the city of Riverside yesterday, what was believed to be an active shooter incident. It brought about a massive police response. I think that's indicative of the fact that people are on edge and people are a little extra cautious, which is good. That's what we're asking people to do. The massive response really came as a result of local law enforcement has really stepped up their patrols and they've stepped up their presence in the region. The city of San Bernardino, we've been on a 12-on, 12-off tactical alert status since the incident happened on Wednesday. We are getting to the point where we're going to start letting some of our guys have some days off and be home with their family. But rest assured, we will have increased staffing, a number of additional folks working overtime to provide safety and security to the region. And I think I speak for Sheriff McMahon as well when I say that we have really truly stepped up our efforts. We will be there for people, and at minimum you will see an increased police presence in our city and in the immediate region through the Christmas holiday season. Okay? Thank you very much. Future press conferences will be announced by the FBI. We'll see you in a bit.